Hey guys, welcome to the call. We're going to go ahead and get started today because I just want to be conscious of everybody's time. And today the presentation is on decision making in times of uncertainty. And it's interesting, Jonathan. Thinking about where we are today, there's a lot of uncertainty out there. You think about the coronavirus, you think about all the protests that are going on, and everything is there's a lot of uncertainty. And so it's funny, we were just having a conversation a minute ago about the coronavirus, and it's almost like the coronavirus is now being overshadowed by all the rioting going on.
Sure.
And so I've got to imagine there's tons of people who are really feeling uncertain now. So how appropriate that we're having a conversation about decision making in times of uncertainty. So a lot of the people that are joining us on the call today are CFOs and HR managers and folks like that. So this will be very, very relevant for them. And one of the things I want to mention to all you guys, this presentation has been approved for 1 hour of HRCI credit, business credit, and it's been approved for 1 hour of SHRM CE credit too for you guys that need it. And so how we're going to do the CE credit, guys, is at the end of the presentation, I'm going to tell you how you can get the codes for your CE. So you got to stay tuned to the end, so we know that you were here, so you can get credit for that. But anyway, I want to introduce our speaker today. And I was just looking over, Jonathan, over your bio, and it's, I was telling you, anybody named Jonathan's got to be a cool dude anyway, right? So, I was looking over your bio, and I just want to read a couple of things. So Jonathan Wilson here is the co-founder of the SEAL Future Foundation and is a former Navy SEAL with over a decade of experience. He's been awarded the Presidential Unit Citation, the Joint Commendation Medal, the Army Achievement Medal, the Combat Action Ribbon, the Navy Achievement Medal, among other honors. Jonathan is also an alumnus of the Harvard Business School Program for Leadership Development, and he's currently working as a national accounts manager at the Capital Group. So that says a lot about you, and we're really excited to have you here. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you teach us about decision making in times of uncertainty. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us, Jonathan, and us being Dan Jess, retirement plan counselor for American Funds, my colleagues on the call as well. And I would just say thanks for the teaming. We spoke a little bit about it earlier, but right now in these difficult times, how do we get through these tough moments? It's coming together. Taking your perspective, our experiences, leadership tools, and bringing that together, that's what our clients deserve. So today's presentation, it's titled as the secrets. There is absolutely no secrets. We all know this, but we get caught in this grind time after time. So what separated us from everybody else, it came down to three things, and we'll hop into that. So let me pull up the presentation. Bear with me. All right. Just to make sure audio is good and the presentation's up.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So what separated us from everybody else is we had a laser focus on the mission at hand. So it makes sense for us to start with our mission today. And our mission at Capital Group is to improve people's lives through successful investing. We are in the people business. And we are entrusted, empowered, and honored to serve those people that we have been selected to do so, to team around organizations and groups like everybody on this call to achieve mission success. We 100% have and always will be in this space. And our number one priority always will be people. And in that vein, I want to take a moment just to recognize kind of the uncertainty, this current environment, the ambiguous environment we all find ourselves in, and just say on behalf of Capital Group and my colleague, Dan Jess, our thoughts and hearts are with you. We hope everyone on this call is doing well. I know we got a small group on this call, but if there are veterans, thank you for your service. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. let's also take a moment to thank those that are fighting for our freedom abroad right now, and also recognize there's a new front line that's forming that isn't clear. It changes every second. Let's pay homage to those medical providers, nurses, doctors, benevolence, all of us that have come together to done stuff in our communities, that echo effect, that ripple effect. Humanity is indebted to everybody that stepped up during these times. So this presentation is going to highlight how we made those decisions on the battlefield. Very ambiguous environment, as everybody imagines, limited information. But here's what I'll say. If we did not make a decision, people got hurt. We were forced to make a decision. It was uncomfortable, but we had to. So we'll highlight how we got that taken care of. Jonathan Wilson, as Jonathan mentioned, I am 4 years at Capital Group, national accounts team covering our strategic record keepers. And I moonlight doing this on the side, taking my experience from the past and then correlating that to what we do in our space. And it absolutely translates. So how do we create those high performing teams that pivot quickly? The systems are identical. Deployed to locations that are listed there, Afghanistan, Iraq, and some other areas. I'm going to skip the second bullet and come back to that. Let's go to the third one. One of 16 of the original 216 people that tried out to be a SEAL, 16 of us made it through. A lot of luck involved with that. I promise you that. A lot of great men that tried out didn't make it. Here's what I would say. One core theme that all those 16 men had in common was their ability to push past their preconceived limits. This mindset of getting comfortable, being uncomfortable is what allowed us to persevere. And right now, when we look back on this, when our clients look back on this, those that were able to embrace that mindset, to take leadership, to step out and not freeze in our tracks, that's what's going to be remembered. Our clients are going to remember how we made them feel. So let's go to the second bullet, 200 plus combat operations missions, extremely relevant today. I have that on there because not a single one of those missions went as planned. Not a single one of those missions went as planned. Think about the might of the U.S. military, her assets, her allies, their assets, the air assets, the ground assets, the sources that were on the ground, the imagery, the satellites, the list goes on and on and on. We still cannot predict what was going to happen on that battlefield. Again, we were forced to make decisions with limited information, and it is exactly where we all find ourselves today. So how does that team operate at that high level consistently, knowing that they can't see the end goal, knowing that they may have to pivot at any moment? It came down to three things, and I promise you this is true for any high-performing team, be it in the boardroom, on the gridiron, or on the battlefield. They have to have a mission, systems, and culture in place. So what is that mission? Is it clear and concise? Does everybody know what success looks like on that team? We call that commander's intent. Does everybody on the team know their roles and responsibilities to achieve mission success? Systems. What are the systems that are in place? They have to be simple because we're already working in a complex environment. So we're going to highlight some tools that we use that allowed us to recognize what was working, what was not, and optimize our team. But more importantly, we are all in this together, one team, one fight. Let's share our successes and failure and optimize the whole force. Communication tempo is extremely important, especially now we're all working remotely. The SEAL teams, the Special Forces units, we're all working remotely as well. So how do we stay aligned? How do we communicate? How do we operate as one entity despite being dispersed across multiple countries? And then culture, a culture of empowerment is absolutely necessary. Our team needs to be entrusted to make their decisions. They are the subject matter experts. As leaders, we need to take a step back and paint that clear picture of what success looks like. So let's hop into the first one. Again, mission, why are we doing what we do? And we have a noble cause, a purposeful mission, and it was the same for us on the battlefield. Everybody bought into it. But more importantly, everybody knew what they were doing. So a SEAL team, imagine us being a SEAL team, needed nothing more than the 5 W's. The who, what, when, where, and why. That team that was empowered with clear roles and responsibilities, knew what their expectations were, knew what the expectations of their teammates and leadership were, immediately after they were given that 5 W's, could start planning. 5 minutes after receiving that intel brief, the 5 W's, they would come back and we would start briefing. The team leaders would brief what the plan is. All the team leaders would do that. 10 minutes after receiving that intel brief, we would be outside with all our gears, talking about contingencies, always talking about contingencies, always reviewing, always rehearsing, always refining the plan until we were on those helicopters. It didn't matter how time sensitive the target was. It didn't matter how time sensitive the mission was. We would still find time to review, rehearse, and refine. And that's extremely important because that allows us to expose the gaps on our terms versus on the battlefield. That's where people get hurt. And if you think about our industry, if we're walking into finals meetings, having not at least talked through it, that's a missed opportunity to just, as a team, think through some of the difficult questions you may be asked. So again, is that mission clear and concise? As a leader, all we need to do is paint a picture of what success looks like. That's commander's intent again. So I'm not the subject matter experts. I trust you because I've seen our contracts, our roles and responsibilities. You know what you need to do. Here's what success looks like around this mission. You build the plan, come back, and let's action it. So how do we create that clarity? Again, it's around those roles and responsibilities. I alluded to it earlier, but I imagine a lot of you would be shocked to hear that every single SEAL team member was on a signed contract. So every person in this photo, the 50 plus people that you can't see, was on a signed contract. Why did we do that? Working in this ambiguous environment, working remotely, we thought we knew our roles and responsibilities, but when we came back from mission, there was a lot of finger pointing. So let's take that ambiguity out of already an ambiguous environment. Let's put everybody on a contract. And this isn't about pointing fingers on where the mistakes lie. No, absolutely not. We're not trying to place blame. We're just trying to identify where the mistakes are happening, get to the root cause so they never happen again. Clear rules of engagement. That absolutely makes sense on the battlefield, I would imagine. Same thing in our line of work again. If our team doesn't know what they are allowed and not allowed to do, they're going to come get approval. In this very complex environment we find ourselves in, at the rate that this information is coming out, how fast our plans are dated and no longer relevant, if somebody has to go ask for approval and come back, the opportunity may have already passed. And then this clear channels of communication. For us, we had 6,000 people working around the world on the missions that we were working on. And we were winning our battles, but losing the war. We were winning our battles because we were learning from our mistakes, learning from our successes, optimizing that team, but we weren't optimizing the whole force. We were working in silos. So albeit we may have been improved around a mistake that we made, another team could have made that same exact mistake a couple weeks later. And that is unacceptable, especially on the battlefield. So how did General McChrystal put everybody in step? He put 6,000 people on a WebEx just like this. And we talked about what the mission is, what commander's intent, what does success look like, who's operating, who's working tonight, any big lessons learned from the missions last night. And that's how you optimize everybody. You optimize the whole force. Everybody learns from those successes and failures. Here at Capital Group, we've obviously adapted, and I imagine a lot of you have as well. We're all working remotely. Our national sales calls went from once a month. Now we're doing them once a week. A lot of the wholesalers and RPCs that I've talked to normally do a cadence call at the beginning of the week or at the end of the week. Let's set the tone for next week. I've talked to a few of them that have modified that because of the rate of information that's coming out and the plans they have in place. They wanted to meet more frequently. So instead of the hour meeting that they historically have done, a few of them have adapted this model where they would do 20-minute huddles every single morning just to check in. Does this plan still make sense? We got some new information from the markets. Yes, no, okay. If yes, continue mission. If not, what do we have to pivot on? 20 minutes, boom, let's get to work. So just something to think about as a team. What does your communication tempo look like? If it's what it was 2 months ago, maybe there's an opportunity for us to pivot. So again, mission, is it clear and concise? What does success look like? How are we communicating with one another? We use roles and responsibilities. Here's the contracts, an example of that. And on the right, that's just an RP advisor. And this is a great internal tool, but also a phenomenal external tool. So maybe with our clients, instead of putting roles and responsibilities, maybe we put expectations. What are the expectations that you have of me? But also, what are the expectations I have of you? This is a two-way street. This is a relationship. All right, so systems. I'm going to share two that we used on the battlefield and one that we're currently using here at Capital Group. The two on the battlefield are going to be simple. We're working in a complex environment. Why overcomplicate it with some of these different technological tools? We're going to share a checklist. We're going to share a debrief. And then we're going to share a 4-box that we created here in 2008, 2009 around the financial crisis, and a 4-box that allows us to think through our conversations before we pick up our phone. So how are we having some tough conversations? Let's get our thoughts in order before we move forward. So if you have not received the checklist, we'll make sure you get it afterwards. I'll get this to Jonathan and he'll send it out. But this checklist is what we use before every single mission. So why is a Navy SEAL team, these professionals, these hard chargers, they know their business inside and out. Why are they using a checklist? It's the same reason the pilots use a checklist. It's the same reason ER doctors use checklists, because we're working in these very volatile environments. And there's times that we're working long hours, stressful situations. Simple mistakes on the battlefield equate to people getting hurt. So how do we take that out of the equation? We use this simple tool. And it was, again, before every single mission. And the first thing you do is you can see the 4 Ps of mission planning is you're going to define what the problem is. And that's essentially what we just talked about. What is the mission here? Is it clear and concise? What does success look like? Check in the box. Move into the planning phase. As a team leader, so how would you use this? Your leadership taps you on the shoulder. You need to go after this opportunity. You need to have this difficult conversation. Any task that you've been tasked with, you are the team leader. So you would, now knowing what the mission is, need to recognize who are the best people to be a part of this team to solve this problem. So you assign those teammates. You provide clear roles and responsibilities. And then you also do the same thing with resources. So what are the resources we need to bring in? And here's what I'll say to everybody on this call. I've already alluded to it. This team of teams, one team, one fight. Historically, we work in our little bubble. We create this group think. Go bigger than that. If compliance needs to be a part of it, legal needs to be a part of it, HR needs to be a part of the solution, have them be a part of the team early stage, or at least have them check in. And then go bigger than that, a layer deeper. You have your partners, you have us, leverage our tools, our 89-year history, our resources, and all the other partners that support you. So once you have identified who those teammates are, define those clear roles and responsibilities, set the expectations, now we got to create the plan. So as a team, we're going to create this plan. Again, seldom does it ever go as planned. So let's create the high probability outcome courses of action is what we call them. So a COA 1 and a COA 2. This is a high probability outcome. Here's a secondary high probability outcome. Knowing, again, 200 plus missions really never went as planned. Let's create this model knowing that we're probably going to have to pivot. Always talk about your contingencies, always review, always rehearse, and always refine the plan. Check. Now you're in the perform phase. So collectively, again, we came together, created a plan. Stick to the plan until the battlefield pivots. And when it does, pivot with it. So poke your head up every now and then. We call those phase lines. So in the mission planning phase, we would have 3 phase lines. You hit the first phase line, pick your head up. Does this still make sense? Is the enemy still on target? Yes, continue mission. Same thing when we're actually on the missions. We would hop off the helicopters. We would start patrolling the target. We would stop, check in, imagery, satellites, helicopters, ISR footage. Are the enemies still on target? Yes. Continue mission. If not, let's take a knee. Where'd they go? They flexed. All right, we're going to create another plan. We have this system in place. Let's create another plan around that target. And we would do that. But again, if nothing's changed, stick to the plan. Check. And then you finally have completed the plan. You come back, and the first thing you need to do, the first thing that we did wasn't go to get chow. We would get off the helicopter, walk right back in the briefing room, and we would start our after action review. And here's what I'll say. This is probably the most important tool any team has if done appropriately, to optimize. If done appropriately, what does that mean? That means we have to take egos out of the room. We have to take rank out of the room. The most junior person has to feel comfortable holding the most senior person accountable if they made mistakes, and doing so in a respectful manner. Feedback has to be just respectful, again, not passive aggressive, and it starts with leadership. Leadership needs to show that they've made mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. And by doing so, you set the precedent. Everybody else is going to follow suit. If we create an environment where we're comfortable with sharing our mistakes, then we're not hiding. We're actually talking about what the problems and successes were. And that's how you constantly optimize. And shared learning, as you get the third bullet on the second topic, we have to share it broadly. I did this internally with their Northeast wholesaling team. I asked a wholesaler to share an example of a failure they had. The gentleman happily did. And then I asked everybody else if anybody made that same mistake after that. The answer was yes. That wholesaler did not share that mistake, and two of his colleagues, just in his territory, not nationally, just in his territory, made the same mistake. So if we're trying to optimize the whole force, if we're all in this together going after this mission, and we are, then we have to be able to put our egos aside and share our successes and failure. How do we do it? Again, we'd hop off the helicopter, go right into the debrief room, and start sharing what we said we were going to do. Everybody would do that. And then we would say what actually happened. Nothing ever goes as planned. This is what actually happened. Is this better or worse? If it's better, let's test it out on our terms. Let's test it on the battlefield and possibly make it part of our standard operating procedure. If it's worse, that's okay. We're going to make mistakes. Why did that happen? Let's get to the root cause, and then let's share that broadly. This is how we made sure to never make the same mistake twice. Third tool I mentioned was a 4-box. And as you can see here, this is a simple but not simplistic tool that we're using around our conversation. So if you had a sheet of paper, you would just draw lines down the middle, horizontally and vertically. And this is how we think about some of the difficult conversations we have. You start on the top left and you acknowledge the current environment. Well, let's be empathetic. Let's check in before we step in. It's the first thing we do. We're humans here. Next, we're going to move over to perspective. Let's offer some perspective. So we would list our notes down there. Again, our 89-year history. History has a way of rhyming, not repeating. So how did similar situations turn out? Let's talk about that. Let's move to the bottom left, confidence. Let's start building that confidence back up. Again, if I talk about capital, our 89-year history, our leadership, our tools, etc. But same with everybody on this call, your leadership, your tools, your experiences collectively, again, I'm going to say it time and time again, is what our clients deserve. Collectively is a better solution. So we start building that confidence back up, and then we move to opportunity. We're going to get to work here. It's time to get back to work. So let's provide that opportunity. Systems. Without systems, you can't measure. If you can't measure, you cannot optimize. And then finally, culture. I mentioned it at the beginning of the presentation, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable. This is us in SEAL training doing something called surf torture. And the purpose is to make somebody quit. And again, I mentioned that the 16 people, albeit we wanted to quit time and time again, we were able to push past. We thought we were at wit's end, but we were able to take that next step. And that's kind of the environment we all find ourselves in. It is overwhelming, especially early on when this started. Having a lot of difficult conversations, it feels overwhelming. Instead of staring at that peak or staring at the end of the week or trying to get to Wednesday, maybe we just get to tonight. And maybe it's just that kind of day where you can't even get tonight. Just take that next step forward. I promise you we'll come out of this. And that's the mindset that we all had, and we're able to step out. And if you look at any great company, leader, organization that was working through difficult times, the ones that made decisions, the ones that stayed positive are the ones that we read about. Those are the ones that we remember. And again, people are going to remember, our clients are going to remember how we made them feel. So it's our duty to stay positive. It's our duty to lead. So how do we make these decisions? There's a great tool that General Colin Powell gave us, and it's the 40-70 rule. And again, if we're on the battlefield and we made no decision, we got hurt. So we were forced to make decisions. And the rule is this: 70% or more information, you waited too long. Opportunity passed. And as humans, we want as much information as possible. But again, we're working in a very different environment. If we wait to get all that information, opportunity is going to pass. 40% or less, not enough information, too many mistakes. So 40-70 is a sweet spot. This isn't an exact science. You have to play with it. But again, if you implement some systems like consulting 3 or 4 instead of the normal 7 or 8 leadership before you make a decision, or making a decision in 48 hours versus the typical week, and understand it's very situational dependent, but by forcing yourself into these systems, it forces you to be uncomfortable. It forces you to get as much information and make those decisions. And again, we have to make decisions right now. Give man or woman purpose and watch them change the world. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have some amazing purpose. What Jonathan didn't mention in my bio was I spent 2 years at Goldman Sachs as an equity trader on Wall Street. And I really struggled coming out of the military, 16 years as a SEAL, going to that environment. And Goldman's a great organization. But for me, what was important to me was I needed that clear mission and purpose. And we have that here. I need to be surrounded by people that supported me, and I supported them at all costs. It wasn't about my P&L. It was about the greater good. And we have that here. Again, how do we do what's best for those that we serve? It's coming together, that old Army adage, one team, one fight. And I'll say it again, and I'll say it at the end of this presentation. We are truly honored to team with Jonathan, with folks, with you all to get through these difficult times. Great quote from my former boss, and that's that mindset, that positivity versus negativity. It takes one person, brings down a whole team. Doesn't matter how big that team is, it just takes one. We have to stay positive during these times. And I know it's not easy, but take a moment, take a step out of our day-to-day. Stop watching what we can't control. Maybe just look around at all the good that's happening. Again, a lot of nonprofits are coming together. A lot of people in their communities are stepping up. Our families, I have 5 beautiful kids. My oldest was off to college. She's back. That was time that was gone. We're doing more things than we've ever had before as a family, hiking, camping, themed dinners. The list goes on and on. Immerse yourself in all the good that's taken place, and then step back into it, and let's do our jobs. So mission, systems, and culture, it's the 3 key components of any high-performing team. And again, you can analyze any sports team that was really successful, boardroom team, any corporation, or for us, any of the elite battlefield units. Those 3 things are core. So here's the family. How does this pertain to our personal life? How do we use this in our personal life? It's the exact same way we talked about. So here's the system. And if we focus on the bottom right, that's a chore chart. That's the mission. So Monday, Alex, feed the dogs. That's the mission. What does success look like? Just get the dogs fed. I don't care. You're the subject matter expert. That is us empowering the workforce. And you can kind of see some of the other tools that we use. So mission, systems, and culture, it allows us to work at these high levels and pivot quickly when we have to. So I don't know if we have time for questions, but I do want to just kind of wrap up there. Let me thank everybody again. Jonathan, thank you for the teaming here. Thank everybody on this call. Really grateful for the opportunity and humbled to serve alongside you. So Jonathan, I don't know if we have time for questions, or if not, that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. We have plenty of time for questions. Because anybody, you guys can type in the chat. I don't know if you see the chat feature there, but I also mentioned in the chat there, if you didn't get the checklist that Jonathan was talking about, to let me know. I sent it out as an email to everybody, I think yesterday. So if you didn't get it and you'd like to have it, you can certainly let me know. But Jonathan, I took a lot of notes. I mean, I got like almost 2 pages of notes that I was sitting here going through. And I mean, I really liked a lot of the stuff that you said. One of the things that really struck me is off the bat, you said something about the ability to push past your perceived limits is what creates success. And, you know, I'm one of these guys, I love listening to all the self-help stuff, but, you know, that's really what it's about, is how do you push past, you know, those things. And I imagine going through the stuff to become a Navy SEAL was all about that. I know you showed a picture here just a minute ago of people you guys doing what'd you call it, the
Surf torture.
Surf torture.
Yeah.
That's probably got to be similar to being waterboarded or something. But how do you push past that? That's pretty awesome. Looks like a couple people said they'd like to have the checklist.
Yeah, we'll send I'll send you the unfortunately PowerPoint. We can't send out the PowerPoint with the notes, but we can send out the slides. And I'm happy to take any questions if after this there are questions. I'd love to, if you want to connect us, Dan and myself, be more than happy to ask some questions. And here's what I'll say about that again is, as I reflect on my time in SEAL training, my goal, there's a week called Hell Week. And for those that are not familiar, they keep you up for 1 week straight and you do ridiculous exercise. They try to make you quit. And that's where the biggest attrition is. And I remember starting out that Saturday, looking at the next Saturday, just got to get 7 days. By the end of the night, I was just trying to get to Wednesday. By the end of the next morning, I was just trying to get to the next evolution. And sometimes when it just gets that overwhelming and you're just that completely exhausted, again, you just have to take that next step. And I think a lot of us are maybe finding ourselves in a similar situation. I know these last 2 months I have, it seems overwhelming. You just take that next step and then another one. And the next thing you know, you're at that peak. So
there's a book called Tiny Habits, and I think it's pretty awesome. And it's about not trying to change everything drastically, but making small changes can make a big difference. So I got some questions coming in. Okay. I got one question that says, I know this might be a little off topic, but physical fitness, I assume, is still part of your DNA. As you get older, do you keep it says, as you get older, how do you keep in shape? If too personal, no biggie.
Yeah, definitely is. I have, our nonprofit partner with a company called Whoop, WHOOP. And it's a tool a wearable tech that you use to monitor your HRV, your sleep patterns, your rest, but you put everybody in a team room. So I have 450 SEALs in a locker room together. And every morning we wake up and see who has and who hasn't worked out. And it is a vicious culture. So I'm working out because my friends will call me out if I don't. So if I'm being honest, there's that accountability as part of it, is the majority of it.
Definitely. Accountability and friends that hold you to task is awesome. All right, so a couple more questions. Give some examples of a mission that went really wrong and some of the thought process and decisions made under those circumstances.
Yeah,
that's a good question.
That's a great question. So here's what I would say. Again, I mentioned, and not a single one of those missions was planned. If I think about any one that didn't go as planned, what allowed us to pivot quickly was we talked through it, we rehearsed it, we did drills tens of thousands of times before. So there were systems in place everywhere. If X happens, the whole team knew we were going to do this. If Y happened, the whole team knew we were going to do this. So it was just creating those habits. You mentioned tiny habits, creating those habits through repetition, 10,000 times over is what they say, that you need to create a habit. I really feel like we did that. And as people watched the SEAL teams, the movies, the books, etc., you see this group that looks like they're moving at lightning speed, and there is some truth to that. But the reality is we earned the right to do that by doing pistol draws 10,000 times. So instead of being on a range and doing the crazy drills, we would just sit there and do a pistol draw. Why would you do something so basic so many times? Because if you're going to your pistol and the fog of war is kicking in, there's stressors, you're being shot at, like you want to make sure that you do that perfectly. And it's no different than our business too. If we do those and we create the systems and just repeat it time and time again, when you do get in that situation, when the fog of war gets kicked in and the proverbial bullets are being flown at you, you're going to respond like you knew you have 10,000 times before. So not a direct answer. I would just say there was a lot of systems in place that allowed us to pivot quickly. And a lot of missions didn't go, again, as planned, and a lot of them went pretty bad, but we were able to pivot through just having talked through it thousands of times before.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about the basic stuff like that. I can't remember. There was a book that I read, and it talked about John Wooten, who's one of the all-time winningest coaches. And it gave an example. It said, freshman kid who's like this All-American shows up for the first day of practice, and they sat down in the first day of practice. The coach teaches them how to put their socks on and how to put their shoes on and how to lace up their shoes. And he goes, are you serious? We're going to go through practice a day. We should be out running drills, but we're talking about putting socks on and tying our shoes. And one of the players looks over to him and says, if you get into the national championship game and you have a blister on your foot, you're not 100%. We don't win the game. And you think about that and you go,
yeah,
wow. So yeah, shooting free throws or drawing your pistol or, you know, any of those kinds of things, it's really about the basics. And
yep.
that makes a lot of sense. There's another question I think that goes along the lines of this when you talk about pivoting. Somebody asked, can you give me an example of the 70-40 rule that you use by yourself today? I don't know if you got a today example, but so I think that makes sense how you can kind of draw the parallel from what you said about pivoting and maybe give an example of when you had to pivot using the 70-40 rule.
Yeah, I'm trying to think for today. I don't know if I have an example today. No, I don't think I do as of yet, but the day's still early, so I'll send the email out when it does happen. But, you know, for me, on the battlefield is what I'll start with, and then I'll come to what I do here at Capital Group. But again, like with, you know, the chaos that's ensuing, we have to make those decisions. So as a team leader, as a troop chief, whatever it was, you're sitting there watching the flow of all your teams take down a target, knowing that they're doing, again, because we've trained 10,000 times before, they're doing what they need to do, trusting them because they're the subject matter experts. You make decisions, and I don't have all the information, but there's a lot of assumptions because I have an empowered team that I unequivocally trust. So I know what they're doing. And there's a great book that was written that a researcher came and did some work on us, and he noticed that we never spoke when we were doing training. So we would take down huge compounds, houses, hotels, prison systems, and not a word would come out. And he called it the flow state. And what that was us doing something so many times together for years and years, operating together, that we didn't even have to talk because I knew what that person was going to do and I knew how he was going to respond to the next person. So I guess where I'm going with that is it takes a lot of reps to get to that mindset where you're able to make those decisions in that sweet spot. But it also, I'll sit there and I'll play with it time and time again. Okay, I made this decision. Does that make sense? And you start developing the systems. Once you put the data on paper, it's very evident where you need to make those calls. So
interesting. So on the battlefield, how can we apply that as business owners or anything else? How can we apply that today?
Yeah, great question. So there's a few things. Probability tools are phenomenal. So here at Capital Group, we have a practice management division. So we're all in on practice management. How can we help you, help the advisors, help plan sponsors think about their businesses? Let's go back to the basics again. So let's analyze, take all the data historically, look at it, and then have a probability percentage that comes out of that. So you know what the sweet spot is. And we have all that information. It's just we don't have time to do that. So it comes down to, you know, taking that 70-40 rule. You have a difficult conversation, but you've had this relationship for 20 years. You can probably analyze the data and know what they're going to do. Your gut's telling you what you're going to do. But if you compare that to the data, I guarantee you probably have a pretty confident knowledge on what the outcome is going to be. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Hey, there was another question that says, how do you make people feel comfortable sharing failures?
Yeah, that's a good one. So for us, we failed at this, and what triggered the SEAL teams to actually do the after action reviews right was that scenario I mentioned in the presentation. So we made a mistake, ego's too big, couldn't own up to the mistake. The next night, I think a British team went out. In fact, I know it was a British team, made the exact same mistake and got hurt. So think about that. That's on us. That was on us because of our pride, our egos, our inability to see the bigger picture here behind, like lying behind this common goal, too egotistical to own our mistakes, and another team got hurt. That's when we realized, okay, we're missing the mark here. That changed everything for us. It took something drastic like that. But for any team that we've worked with, doing these after actions are not easy. I recognize that. It starts with the leadership. The leadership has to step in and show, lead by example. I made a horrible mistake, horrible call. Like, we're all humans. We're going to make bad calls, or we're going to make mistakes. If that leader raises their hand and shows that, I promise you, people are going to start getting comfortable sharing. You create that environment, that safe place where we know we're sharing because we want to get better. It becomes contagious. And it only takes one time, though, for somebody to come in and be passive aggressive, somebody to snap, and then all that hard work's out the window.
So it comes from the top down.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I heard a guy speak before, and this was one of these guys who he had been in jail and he was in gangs, and he had kind of turned his life around and was really helping people get off the streets and get off the drugs. And he talked about how, as a, you know, drug dealer or whatever, it's like, you know, you live in constant fear that a bad decision could be life or death, right? And he was trying to draw the parallel to business. And I thought it was a pretty interesting thing. He's like, it's not likely in business you're going to, you know, go to the water cooler and get stabbed and somebody's going to steal your business. But that's how it works in the drug world. And so he's drawing that parallel on how to make decisions. So, I mean, I know we're talking about with you, this is life and death, you know, as a Navy SEAL, it's life and death. But as a business, it's not necessarily life or death. How can we draw off of some of those parallels in making those decisions that are, you know, do we have to, you know, maybe put some bigger consequences to it, or how can we change our perception of those kinds of decisions?
No, it's a great question. So a lot of us won't, because we're comfortable. Business is fine. Life is good. For the few that recognize they want to, you know, maybe cannibalize their business, stop everything, which is a difficult thing to do, and rebuild those systems, that foundation that allows them to grow off that. There's not too many people that are willing to do that, though. And again, Capital Group has invested a lot of money, millions of dollars, into supporting in this initiative, this practice management. Let's get great at the basics again, and then build your business off of that. And then statistically, we show how important it is to do that. Even then, there's a lot of people that are just like, this is too disruptive. Let's just get back to the flow. So I guess where I'm going with that is, it's a decision that has to be made by the individual. And when it's going to be tough. And again, what's the downside? It's not life or death. So, you know, the alternative is a really good, great life that I'm living. I'm very comfortable. Or I cannibalize everything and it gets difficult, but the outcome is guaranteed. Maybe not guaranteed, but it is going to be better. There's a high probability it's going to be better. A lot of people choose the comfortable.
Yeah, is making that transition. I remember early on, I actually started out as a life insurance agent, and I remember I was doing some training, and one of the like second in charge guys of the company, he tells me, he says, the only way to grow personally and professionally is that you have to get out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. And I always remember that. And sometimes I make decisions and you go, it's almost like what you said is, you go, man, I'm comfortable. This is great. You know, life is good, but yet, you know, you can do better. So imagine, just like anybody, you struggle with, you know, how do I make that step? Because it is taking a risk.
It is, yeah. It's I'll share. Somebody asked the question around physical fitness. So about 2 years ago, I felt myself getting complacent. So same workout, doing it a while. It was really simple. So as a nonprofit, I said, why don't we do something special? Let's do something that's off the charts, and it's going to take some pain, and we might not even be able to do it. And I perked up a lot of SEALs. Like that's what usually motivates them. So I ended up getting a couple other SEALs to do it with me. And what we did is, for around traumatic brain injury, we did a 3 evolution event. So we skydived into the Pacific Ocean. We swam 3 miles, and then we got out, cleaned up, put our gear on, our bulletproof vest, and we ran 100 miles for traumatic brain injury. I promise you, I was very comfortable leading up to that, and I didn't have to do that. But for me, that mindset was, I sensed it. I was like, oh man, here it comes. I'm getting complacent. I do the same thing with work. So if we're getting comfortable and we're all getting those routines, and again, we can just coast and be fine, that's okay. But can you do something more? And this presentation was birthed off of that. We just had an opportunity to add more value to the people that we get to serve, our clients, our teammates. So we created this presentation. So again, my day job is not this. My day job is on the national accounts team, covers strategic record keepers, but got complacent, got comfortable, saw an opportunity, and this is where we stepped in. So just, I guess we're bringing that full circle is it lies on that individual. We're going to be fine if we decide to not do anything, but is there an opportunity for us to grow? That's going to be painful. But once you go in, you're going to come out on top.
Go in confidence, right?
Yeah.
Interesting. Hey, so I had a question pop up, and I'll see if we can answer this without getting too specific, but it says, what would you say to someone that is about to retire and needs to have some more successful investing? I have trouble making a decision. I like the acknowledged perspective and confidence and opportunity. So, and sure, I quite understand the question, but I guess looking at that too is like anything. If you're making a decision, you got to make a decision on retirement, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes those things are uncomfortable, but it's almost like what we just said. Sometimes you have to step outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And it's almost like staying working. You've always had that comfort of, hey, I've got the comfort of a paycheck. Whenever you retire, it's you have to become comfortable with the uncomfortable, right?
That's right.
I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's I always go back to, in anything I do, I go back to what's the end goal here, and I work backwards from there. So if we go to that individual and they want to live X type of life, well, we can quantify that, what that looks like. Then once you have that number, you can backdate it to, okay, right now where you're at, you're going to fall 20 years short of the end goal here. So whatever it may be, but that's, and the other thing too, just to point out, and maybe a bad assumption on my part, but just another thought is maybe that individual is, their goal is exactly, they're aligned exactly with that goal. And maybe the individual that asked the question is thinking about it differently than they want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's perspective too. And
Yeah.
I agree. It is, what is your goal in retirement?
Yeah.
This question could actually relate to anything, not just retirement. It could be business, right?
Oh, 100%.
How does it relate to your business? So I think for that person, it is what is your goal and objective? And it goes back to the same things that we talked about earlier, right? So acknowledge perspective, confidence, and opportunity. So it is, what do you want to achieve? What is the opportunity? How do you get confidence? How do you do those things? So that can almost relate back to everything you just said.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like it's time truth. I've made an assumptions, and that's probably one of the worst things that anybody can do, but I've done it. And my oldest daughter, she's 19. That's the perfect case and example. I'll make an assumption and then I go ask the questions afterwards, and I probably should have flipped that around. So, all
Don't we all?
Yeah. So, just, I guess the point there is, just asking what are you trying to achieve here? Because I thought it was this, and it's like, absolutely not. That's a horrible assumption. Or yeah, that's spot on. If that's the case, then let me show you how that's not aligned with what you're trying to achieve. And let me see if I can help you.
So it's really about setting the goal. And it's like, that's the mission, right? You set the goal of the mission, and then you kind of follow the process to go, what do I need to do to accomplish that mission and that goal?
Yep. 100%.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let me ask you this question. This is a question from me, is like, I know you showed pictures of your family. How does that relate back, like, to the family and working with, with your kids? I've got 4 kids myself, and, man, it's one of the challenges, but, you probably run pretty structured at home. I saw your work chart. I made a note of your work chart. I was like, that's a great idea. So how does that go over, and how does that work? Is that works pretty good?
It depends on leadership, right? So there's time. I'm probably the weak leader in the family. I let the kids get away with a lot, but it all depends on the accountability. So we actually have a farm out here. We have 2 horses, pig, 50 chickens, some goats. So they got the chore chart is a lot longer than what you saw. And everybody has to pull their weight. So at the end of the day, we tell them to do it, and we'll go back and check. And if they haven't, they have to go do it. So, and it's not perfect all the time. I promise you that. So we're having to step in quite a bit, and then there's bad days. But for the most part, it allows us all to kind of contribute to mission success.
Well, I imagine everybody on this call who is in a leadership position at work can probably totally relate to that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to have bad days where you got to step it up. So I guess you as the leader, there's a lot of times when you got to roll up your sleeves and scoop out the poop out of the stalls
That's
or
right.
whatever, right? So
Yeah.
you got to get dirty with the team.
That's right. Yeah. And oh, by the way, like every chore on there, I have to do as well. So we just go down the list. Like, it's your day, Daddy. It's your day, Mommy. It's your day, Madison. So there is no, it doesn't matter who's what. We're all in this together. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Well, guys, it's about 10 minutes till, so I think we've gone over all the questions that we've got. If anybody else has a question, type it in the chat. But so one of the things that I told you that we would do wrapping this up is, if you need the CE credit for SHRM or HRCI, if you will just email me, and what I'll do is I'll just email you back the certificate with all the numbers and everything on it. So my email address is Jonathan, Jonathon. All the cool guys spell it with an O-N, and the rest of the guys spell it with an A-N. But if you guys, it's Jonathan at Gate City Advisors, email me. I'll send you the certificate, and we'll get you your CE credit. Well, Jonathan, man, I tell you what, this has been great. I've got a lot of takeaways from this. I see some chats popping up. Thank you both. But yeah, I really I appreciate you taking the time, and I appreciate Dan setting this up at American Funds and allowing us to have this call. I think it was very beneficial.
Great. Well, again, happy to team here, and I'll say it. I'll start, or I'll end where we started. We're in this together, humbled and honored to serve alongside you. Let us be a part of the team. Put us to work.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thanks again. And everybody else, thanks for joining us. This is being recorded, so there'll be a playback if anybody's interested. And then I think Jonathan also is willing to send the slides out. So I guess I can get that from you guys or from Dan.
Yep.
So everybody, hey, listen, I appreciate you joining us. Jonathan, thanks for being here. I really appreciate your time too.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe.
Right. Yeah, I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. All right. Thanks.